whereas efficient is to do the same amount of work with less effort. So actually, even though it's called effective Scrum, I'm trying to get to both goals actually. So hopefully we can also get some efficiency in it. So let me just start. I'm Jacob Svalastoga. It sounds way better in Norwegian than it does in English and Lithuanian, but I have worked for DtecNet software forever, almost. It's an anti-piracy company. I was there when we started, and everything was manual work, and from there on we grew into an IT business, doing automated collection on the internet. Basically, anti-piracy is all about collecting data about users and websites and so on. We grew and won the Gazelle in 2010. It's the award for most growing company. And then we switched to Scrum because that was the big trend just before getting bought by MarkMonitor. And we basically had a lot of struggling with understanding Scrum. And well, as you will see later on, we had a million ideas of what to do and what not to do, but none of them were really good because we didn't have a good philosophy on where we wanted to go with the whole thing. So that's what I'm trying to edge out later on. I'm very much into challenges and bets. I ended up running the Lithuanian half marathon very recently because I made a bet. It's in this shape and form, and it was not very nice, but I won the bet, so it's all that matters, right? So I'm just, if you have any interesting challenges, please go ahead and challenge me. Other than that, I just wanted to know a little bit more about you before we start, because I'm also going to talk a little bit about culture. And culture is very different from country to country, so it's important to understand what kind of audience I'm speaking to. So how many are from Denmark in here? All right, we are richly represented, that's great. And Lithuania? Okay, not so many. Okay, that's great. And how many are developers in here? Whoa, okay, that's a lot. Hopefully I will not bore you to death, because I'm a developer myself. The reason I started with interesting myself for Scrum is that I wanted to change a lot of stuff. So maybe you can go the same way. Just if I'm shaking a little bit, and I am a little bit nervous. But I just flew in from America, and I didn't sleep more or less all night. And now I had 3 Red Bulls, I think, and 6 cups of coffee. So I'm set. It's all good. So let's move on. I usually have somebody to press the buttons. Okay, so as you can see, this is Kilimanjaro mountain, and it's me standing there. And this smile is very fake. I'm not feeling good at all. It's only because there's a guy holding a camera against me. So, but actually I'm wearing the DtecNet shirt up there, and it was kind of a gift to the team. I was just a guy in the team, but we kind of all felt that everything would be possible as long as we just wore that DtecNet uniform. So we had a pretty strong culture in the team. And we lived by this, basically, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what the F is standing for, but just F and do it. That was the general plan when we were developing stuff. We didn't really have an idea of how to improve. We basically just did whatever that was told, and then we tried to do our best to perfect that when there was nobody asking us for stuff. Is the sound okay? Super. Okay, I will move on. So this was our idea, and we had this idea all of a sudden that we should do Scrum. And the main thing that we kind of understood about Scrum is that it has some kind of product owner that fills this magic list of what to build, and then we have a Scrum Master who is more or less the meeting guy. It was not very thought through. Basically what happened to us in a period after adopting Scrum was that we lost a lot of time trying to cope with the new methodology, and we gained nearly nothing. So, and maybe we were also not so smart about it. We could have done some more homework, but this is basically our initial, maybe a little bit dark perspective on it, because I really didn't like it back then. I loved our freedom and the way we could just build stuff all the time. So the most horrible thing that happened when we were doing Scrum is that we would sit at this magical meeting called retrospective, and everybody would be sitting there and smiling like everything was fantastic. And actually we had nightmares every day about working and all this planning thing that took forever, and we never made a good plan. But we always came to the retro, and how did it go? Well, it went kind of good, I guess. I don't know. How should we know? That's the big thing, because we had nothing to compare to, and I guess this sprint was a little bit better than the last sprint, maybe. So nobody really did anything to improve it. So let me just break off a little bit and ask you, you are practicing Scrum, yes? How many? Okay, that's a lot. So if this question was asked to me by Vidas back when I came here, and it actually inspired me to start working on improving all the time. So if I can say the lowest level is 0 and the highest is 5, and then you raise your hand when you think that I mentioned the level that you would be at, approximately. So, any zeros in here? No? Everybody's feeling good. Okay. I was the only 0 when Vidas asked. I was kind of proud about that. Okay, so 1, a couple, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. No 5s. Okay, that's good. It's kind of a trick question anyway, I think. So, okay, that's good. So, we started from kind of realizing that this retrospective is, I mean, this is supposed to be the vehicle for continuous improvement. That was what we understood, yet we were not getting anything of it. And a part of the reason was that every time we had an exercise for all people, it went into kind of a bandwagon effect. So when one guy had first asked what was good, then everybody would mention the same thing. And then after that, the same bad thing would come again. And we would all agree on 4 or 5 score. So we started to look at changing this. We went into a different mindset that I have had some problems with defining, but I think I arrived at the right definition that is long-term greedy. It's basically that everything we do, we can invest into the future. Everything we do that is not development related. And we take all the small things and try to see if they are actually important. And we try to experiment more. And that was kind of the idea to improving this situation. So for a year, almost a year, we ran the level 0 Scrum. And then we changed a little bit. I grew up to become a Scrum Master, and I tried to kind of formulate a mission of what I would be doing as a Scrum Master and a guy who takes an interest into Scrum. And of course there's all the technical excellence, software quality, and usual things that you have to nurse somehow in a team. But also happiness became a very big focus for us, because actually it was one of the big things that set apart our Scrum work from the non-Scrum work. So we tried also to build again the same passion that we had before, but now with hopefully a plan to understand it. And the idea of the passion, it's well, it's a very soft term, so I'm gonna help you a little bit. There's a wall of text here. It's basically the only usable thing from Urban Dictionary, I think. I don't know, but pretty close. Basically, in short, passion is basically taking responsibility and caring for what you do, and with it also comes a kind of pride that it's a very good vehicle for motivating teams. So we tried to see and find a way in which we could basically find a way to understand how we can realize this mission. And in order to do so, we have to understand both the people in the teams, but also the work we do. And to start with the people, we kind of had the McGregor perspective. We're using him to understand it, but from a little bit different point of view, which I will show a little bit later. Is there anybody here that's not familiar with McGregor? Okay. So there's a McGregor, very short, has two assumptions about people that are very different. And it's assumptions because it's a way that we typically look at people that we work together with. And there are two assumptions. The first one, X. It's the X theory goes that all people are motivated by greed and fear of being punished, and that makes them do stuff. And the basic assumption is that they don't really want to work that much. So if you don't define a very clear path to work on, then nothing will be done. And on the other hand, theory Y is the exact opposite, more or less, where in which people are very willing to work, and if you actually don't specify anything, they will start working by themselves. And of course, the popular exercise for McGregor presentations is to ask everybody whether they think they are a Y or an X person. And unless they are very special, then they will say a Y person. But you will always mention some X's here and there. And the reality is that they don't really exist. Like, people can behave like an X person, but in reality we are all Ys. We want to do good. That's at least my basic assumption. And I don't think we would hire people that were X's anyway, or keep them. So here is a little bit more on the X. The interesting things to add here is that we discovered that people start to behave a little bit in the patterns of X when you start to punish them very hard for failing sprints, or when you run into bad retros, or if this change request ignored. Like if people are in a retro and they propose changes, we should always act on them. That's the main danger. And the hopelessness is probably, it's a term that I wrote this because it's kind of the end, the hopeless end, in which you go and have retros after that year of level 0 Scrum. You go and have retros, you know that nothing is happening, you know that planning is not improving, you know that next weeks are going to be exactly the same. So that is when you need to either do something very drastic, or you are just not getting what you want from the retros. Y, on the other hand, is of course benefits a lot from both celebration, victories, delivering hard on challenges, solving complex problems, and so on. Well, it's very logical that you have a happy worker who wants to work, and if we get some achievement from it, or we learn some stuff, then we will move forward a lot. So this is kind of what goes into the people area. And what is very interesting to me, and what I kind of realized, is that a lot of these things have a kind of spiral thing. They go worse and worse and worse, or they go better and better and better. So it's, for us, we only needed to make the retro work once and then work from there, and we were basically continuously improving ourselves. So in order to understand work a little bit better, we just used a very simple model that was presented by Special Operations Forces, which is like the elite soldiers of Denmark. They decided to do team building, and they came up with this super name, and they presented a very cool but very simple, understandable model of dealing with comfort zones. So I'm sure you all know it, and probably there are many versions of it. What I use to look at is the perceived complexity of work. And I will explain now what it means. There's a little bit different. So the perceived complexity of work is, you can divide it into 3 areas. First of all, you have the comfort options, which is where you do the job that you are used to do and always do, and you are very comfortable estimating it. And then you have the more challenging part of work, and in the end you move into the red zone, basically things that you cannot do and is not comfortable doing at all. Of course, this red zone for elite troops and soldiers, it means some pretty serious business, right? Maybe dying or something, but here it's a lot less serious. But still, it can be very hard to estimate stuff. It can be very hard to deliver value, actually. So, if we look at it from a different way, maybe not even micromanagement, but just management potential in general, all of the visibility that we have, that we get from Scrum, it's basically mostly suited for the comfort zone and the challenges. It's not so suited for red zone development. It's more where we typically do a spike or something like that. I guess you all agree with that. It's not so nice to estimate on things you barely know and you are not comfortable doing. So if we map that back to McGregor, we get that, well, if we have a X type of team, We can say that they can work probably safely in the comfort zone and feel good about that. But if we consider the more challenging options and where we need to think differently about stuff, we definitely need why people. And the thing is that we can control this very much ourselves because it feeds back into how much we manage stuff. If we micromanage every project and monitor time and decide what should be built and so on, well, then probably we are moving towards the green area. And in the case that we are need the expert knowledge and the freedom of the developer to make some decisions on how to research things, well, then we're also moving away from the closer management. And since I'm Danish, I understand the horrors of being managed way better than Lithuanian, not because you're bad, but because you're actually way better than Danish workers, because they don't like to work so much. Well, it's kind of the truth, so, but it's a little bit funny. So in the end, the teams that I looked at to see if this fit, they fell into two categories. And the first one is this where we only have comfort and challenge. Basically, there are no red areas for these teams. And they are typically busy with optimizing velocity. And of course, there shouldn't be any, we shouldn't start to build spaceships in the middle of building cars if we are worrying about velocity. It's also what happens if you very tightly manage teams. They will start to estimate and only do things that are easy to deliver. And this is not a negative thing at all. You could say that it's the pattern of also being a little bit defensive if the team is self-empowered. But it is still a bad pattern in some ways. It's basically the natural evolution of a team that evolves slowly and getting smarter and smarter about what they're doing. If they continue to do the same thing, they will end up in here. And not necessarily with pushback problems, but a lot of the issues that will come very fast is that all inventions will be illegitimate. And I mean large inventions. I mean red zone inventions. And to make an example of this, we had a guy that built an automated deployment system in a distributed fashion without it ever making it into the Scrum board. Nobody knew it existed, but he was magically 8 hours faster at deploying than normal, which is insane. It should, of course, go in there. And actually, the other model that I like a lot more is the model where everything is a challenge, where we try to keep automating all the comfort stuff, and we keep building more and more challenges, and we even have room for research and development of the red zone. Right now we have that implemented as a single research day in every sprint, and it allows us to, instead of building a spike, it allows us basically to get a much better idea and much better prototyping ideas on new areas of research. It also doesn't hurt us a lot if a customer presents a new idea, because we're already used to working with new ideas. So we are very dynamic in that sense. But there is of course dangers associated with this. It's much less stable. Well, how much? It depends on how good people are at estimating. Also, when they know that they might not know all of the truth. And it's also a little bit more vulnerable to prior ones and support tasks that require immediate attention. Sorry. And then you can say what you lose using this model is that you lose velocity as a parameter. And I can say that it's very fun to be in such a team where everything is research and still delivering a lot. But from management side, it might not be so applicable, because losing velocity could be very important for people who use that parameter. In our team currently, the velocity parameter is just used as a pointer to which how much we could commit, but nothing else. We're not trying to increase it. We are just trying to build great projects. So it's a toss-up. If you have a lot of new research, I propose that you start allocating R&D time and start getting used to that you will have a lot of changes. If you have a lot of continuous improvement in the same areas, if you already have the expertise that you need, then I would propose to get an idea of this comfort zone image, and but I would always remind to keep inventions legitimate. So the end goal for us in this area is that we keep using the retro to make sure that all our development activities are focused. As usual, it's the same recipe that it says everywhere, but it's still very important. And that all our non-development activities are meaningful and brings value to our development work. And we try to have a contract to which we can improve stuff. We agree always to improve it. And one of the main agreements in that sense is that nothing is sacred in our team. We basically have a debate, ongoing debate, whether we should have stand-up, whether planning should be time-boxed, whether, you know, everything that everybody else in this Agile tour and the other speakers, they are also thinking about it. Well, great ideas come from the idea that you want to improve something. So that's basically what we end up doing. So any questions and answers? Is it an answer on question?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah, you know I'm Danish. You introduced, I heard your observations about the Danes, and I did not get offended. But
Of course not.
But of course, I can only agree with you.
Yeah.
I was just saying only because, from your perspective, take Lithuania.
Yeah.
Are there any pitfalls here that you would like to highlight whilst you're here? You've been here before.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what would you say to the audience?
Okay. Yeah. So I think just going from the Danish perspective, that being Danish, you grow up with not believing so much in authority. Not in a bad way, but in a way that leads you to challenging the existing ideas and power structures on a almost subconscious basis. So it's when we are told what to do, we think about why it could be that we are told to do this. And if there's something I think that is very healthy for a culture where we focus on continuous improvement, it is that to kind of challenge the existing ideas a little bit. Because maybe some of those ideas that are dictating how you do stuff, they are actually old, or they are based on tradition, or they are not very aligned to what delivers value. Does that answer your question?
Yes, partly.
Okay.
I would say that yes, and I agree again with the observation.
Okay.
But are there any observations as far as this country, of course, is concerned, where you would say, here I would like to hoist a warning signal or a small flag or whatever?
Actually,
Negative.
yeah. Actually, I've always been a great fan of Lithuanian mentality, work mentality, culture, and so on. So, the only thing is, if I would take something from this, I would start to challenge authority a bit more, and not in a bad way, like resisting it, but kind of working with it to prove that you can deliver more value. It's still, I can't go out of the value focus, because I really think that if you have a great plan and you think you are maximizing the output of your team and that is the important thing, then you should go with that. Definitely. It's always good. I mean, Scrum is only a tool. It is only a tool. Like, we are building products, we are changing the lives of people, whatever we do in whatever business, and if we use a hammer or a chainsaw, it doesn't matter, as long as we get the job done. So, okay. Anything else? Yeah, yeah. I understand what. Yeah, they are kind of extremes. They are. The one is very safe, and the other one is as risky as, you know, reasonable sense making allows it. But you can be anywhere in between that. My offer to you is just that you reflect on where you are, so you can start looking at whether you want to use velocity or it's a good idea. Because this can also be used to argue against velocity, for instance. If you are only building new spaceships and maybe time travel, working on that, it's kind of a red zone area, right? So if you have a manager that every sprint comes and discusses velocity with you, I wouldn't find that very comfortable.
Okay. And the latest question would be, is it okay for a team with a single project to go in the states, or should they stay? They should be stable.
I think it's a good idea to realize that this should probably at least go for one sprint, right? Because it also affects planning and grooming and your general mentality towards spikes and research and so on. But if you're heavily focused towards research, you should probably move a little bit to the red area. I'm going for a mostly static. He's confusing me very much now. So wait a minute. So you stop time? It's time travel invented now? Okay. Okay, super. Because she wrote 15 minutes left again. So sorry, but if you just consider where your team are, in terms of doing new research and in terms of understanding the problematic areas, then you can also get an idea of what kind of state you're in. And you can use that to say, okay, what kind of people do we need? And you can use that to make up a good combination, so you have a philosophy for continuously improving, no matter if you do a lot of research, because that was our problem. Okay. Any other questions? No? Then I have some bonus slides. Are you hungry, by the way? How many is hungry? Oh, 40% hungry. Okay. Yes? You wanted to say something, but you have problems. Downstairs on the left. All right. Yes, ma'am. All right. So, some reflections on what makes up a team and the different roles, how they can benefit, and so on. There's a couple of slides now, basically covering all the points of interest that I would recommend to kind of nurture and grow in a team. And some of them can be grown more successfully than others. So if we talk about a good product owner, then there's a lot of, basically, all of the points except for the product vision is something that can be grown out of basically either communication, knowledge sharing with developers and customers and so on, basically just doing a lot of homework on products and learning about it. The top one though, it's a kind of, it's a skill. It's also something you can learn via workshops and you can build it and so on, but it's super important to be visionary about the product that we're building. And it's one of the reasons why is that frequently senior management will ask for roadmaps and many other things. And if your product owner doesn't have a very specific idea of how to build the product, he will never be able to create a discussion on what is needed to be built and what should go into that roadmap, which means that it will be senior management deciding everything, which can be a good idea. It's probably a very good idea, but it means that your time frame for readjusting and planning new sprints, completing improvements, all of your planning will be challenged because the vision doesn't carry through to the team. So of course everybody should have a strong vision of the product, but the product owner is probably the most important person in that regard. Scrum Master. I would say the first one is again sort of subtle skill. Is you should never be afraid to do stuff, even when people say you're a little bit crazy. Just agree with them and change stuff anyway. I like the things here a lot. I will just only talk about the micro changes and evolution, because I'm wearing many hats in our company, and I can put on the angry hat and make very drastic changes. But I can also put on my Scrum Master hat and do very small changes. And the times I try to make very big changes, like shuffling teams or doing some, other things, I meet a lot of resistance. Whereas if you focus on microscopic changes all the time, chances are they will just be implemented. And a thing that I probably didn't emphasize so much is that it's super important to be busy about the future. The retrospective, the reason it improved for us was that we always put the perspective to the future, and not well, the sprint, if it was good or bad, didn't matter so much in the end. We're just asking the question, what do you want next week? Okay, next week. Okay, let's not have any stand-ups. Let's have meaningful planning. Let's have, okay, how do we get there? Like it's the future is always a good way to start a dialogue about good changes that people want. How are we doing with the time? How many is hungry? All right, green light. We go on a little bit more. So, the great team members, I gotta say one thing. You can really do a lot in a Scrum team where you start agreeing on what you want the most. You can make a lot of changes. We have been moving from 1 week to 3 week to 4 week to 2 week sprints. We've been having kickoffs inside sprints, grooming, double time, blah, blah, blah. We've done a lot of things. But all of these things cost a lot of time. And it's very important to have team members who can just, if you don't disturb them, they just push through and work. It's very important. Filling the empty space, if you know about T-shape development and thinking about developers as people who can overlap each other a little bit is super important. If you don't have that, get started on knowledge sharing very fast. And the last one is, like, if you really have problems with other people or with the project or whatever problems you might have, find a way to share it somehow. Because chances are that the rest of the team will listen, you will improve it, and you don't have to worry about it. It's very simple. We also improved the meetings. And from a very simple improvement mechanic for the meetings was that we have a parking lot. It's super simple. Every time somebody mentions something that we were not supposed to talk about, it's parked. And that means that all of a sudden things go a lot easier. We're still working on duration and frequency. It will always be a hot topic. These are actually from our engineering vision. We should own everything we build, so it should always be ours if we built it. If we took it over from somebody, it's also ours. I'm not gonna argue with you if you think otherwise, but that's kind of my idea. It's important to keep in mind that people are, when you want to do micro changes, there's a good chance that people want something and really also don't want another thing. And you can have many different types of people in a team. And the perfect example of that is we have, I'm not gonna say any names, but we have one person. And actually he's come across that like very angry always. But the thing is, nobody lets him speak, and that's why he's angry. He's not angry about anything. He wanted to say a good thing, but now he's not allowed time. And so he gets more and more angry. So when he finally gets his word, then God forbid that anybody interrupts him. And, you know, he's really... And these people exist, so find the key that can activate them. What I do is just I let them speak first. And there's a happy guy right there. And I didn't do anything other than I didn't follow the Scrum round circle, you know, always speak in different patterns and so on. No. In this team, it's a fixed pattern. This guy goes first. Then we are happy, right? So it's all about tailoring it to the basic need of the team, which can be very different. Okay, last thing. I know many are hungry now and we only have a few minutes, so just for some fun in the end. Simple goals, they are super good. And I have an expert in simple goals. Right here. This is my dog. It used to belong to grandma, and it spent the first 10 years of its life only looking up at grandma while grandma was looking at the dog and patting it. That was all it did. Now it's going to work on a frequent basis and also has a lot more friends. It only has 3 goals in life: maximize food and attention, and just go to sleep otherwise. And you can see it's very successful dog. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening.